Emergency services. What's going on? The situation is critical. We need an ambulance immediately. Trainer Marina Lissaro was pulled underwater. Marina had dreamed her entire life of swimming with giants. She spent years training and working with the most majestic predators of the ocean, building a bond with creatures most people could only dream of encountering. But on a warm June afternoon, at OceanWorld Orlando, the dream she had fought for turned into a nightmare she wasn't prepared for. This is the harrowing story of that day, a story of a broken bond and a life lost in the merciless depths. Stay with us, because what you're about to see is unlike anything you've seen before. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do so. Like the video and share it. Now let's dive into the core of this terrifying event. Marina Lissaro wasn't just a trainer. She lived and breathed the ocean and its inhabitants. At 33, she was already one of the most respected marine animal trainers in the world. Her passion for orcas ran deeper than just a job. It was a lifelong obsession, a dream that guided her every step. For 10 years, Marina worked with the ocean's most fearsome predators. But there was one orca she shared a unique connection with, a 19-foot, 8,000-pound force of nature named Nila. Nila wasn't just any orca. She was a majestic creature, captured in the wild off the coast of Iceland. For years, she was the star of OceanWorld Orlando's iconic shows. But it was Marina who formed an unspoken bond with Nila, a bond deeper than any other trainer could comprehend. One of Marina's colleagues once said, "Marina and Nila had something special. You could see it when they were together, an unbreakable trust." Marina could do things with Nila that no one else could. In the water, they were like one being. It was magical. On the surface, everything looked perfect. The crowd cheered as Marina and Nila performed breathtaking stunts, rising and spinning together in elegant choreography. Marina was known for her fearless nature and unwavering bond with the animals. She loved Nila like family, spending countless hours not only training, but trying to truly understand her. Another colleague said, Marina was fearless. She had energy and heart. She wasn't afraid of orcas like most people. She always stayed calm, like she could control them with just a look. But behind the beautiful performances were troubling moments, subtle signs people chose to ignore, brushing them off as quirks of unpredictable animals. Despite her strength, Nila had a history of minor aggression, incidents that were kept quiet. She would slap the water, sometimes give warning tail slaps, gestures no one took seriously. In the world of captive orcas, aggression isn't rare. These are wild creatures, after all. But in Marina's eyes, Nila was more than a performer. She was a partner. Yet no one knew what storm that bond was hiding beneath the surface. Nila was a creature of the sea, born in Iceland's cold, dark waters. Captured in 1992 and brought to captivity at OceanWorld Orlando. She was a powerhouse, 19 feet long, 8,000 pounds of raw muscle. But beneath that strength, there was something no one could quite understand, something hidden beneath her graceful surface. At first glance, Nila seemed like any other orca, beautiful, smooth, mesmerizing in her movements. She executed tricks with precision, amazing the crowds, but those who spent the most time with her knew. Under the calm exterior, there was something more. The story wasn't widely known. Few people knew the truth about Nila's behavior, a history of aggressive incidents that had been silenced. It started small, ignoring gestures during shows, snapping her jaws to signal irritation or frustration. Minor jolts written off as wild unpredictability. A former trainer recalled, there were signs, small details, but no one wanted to admit them. Everything was dismissed as normal. A tail slap here, a moment of aggression there. Everyone thought it was fine. After all, it's an orca. But something wasn't right. Those who paid attention knew better. Beneath Neela's majestic appearance hid a rage no one wanted to acknowledge. A bottled-up power that had been ignored for too long. Marina knew those signs. She understood Neela better than anyone. But even she couldn't predict what would happen, what no one saw coming. And it wasn't just about Neela. It was about the system itself. The constant pressure to perform, the stress of captivity that wears down even the grandest of creatures. Beneath the surface, change was brewing. The signs were there, but no one acted. Neela's aggression and disobedience had been overlooked for years. And now, there would be a price to pay. It was a warm, humid summer afternoon in OceanWorld, Orlando, a day when the sun burned mercilessly. Laughter filled the air, and the scent of salt water wafted on the breeze. Guests poured in, eager to witness the amazing animals. One show stood above the rest, the Dance with Giants. It was the crowd's favorite, and today was supposed to be no different. At 2:30 p.m., the gates opened and crowds rushed in, buzzing with excitement. The arena was packed. The pool shimmered under the blazing sun, reflecting the bright blue sky. Marina Lissaro, as always, was calm and focused, preparing backstage for the signature act with Neela. Today's trick was special, one Marina and Neela had rehearsed countless times. Neela was supposed to lift Marina out of the water on her rostrum, a move that always wowed the audience, showing the Orca's power in a beautifully synchronized dance. Timing had to be perfect, precision flawless. Marina trusted Neela completely, as always. She had spent years with her, training, bonding, understanding every move. But today, something felt different. As the show began, the tension was noticeable. Marina took her position, waiting for Neela's signal. The Orca was slow to respond, lingering underwater. Her massive body moved with unusual hesitation. Marina gave her the familiar hand signal, the one that always brought Neela to her. But Neela didn't move as quickly as she usually did. Marina, trying to remain calm, something that always defined her, whispered to herself, "She's just been stubborn today. It's nothing serious. She'll come around soon." But it wasn't nothing. The moment of truth had arrived. Marina stood at the edge of the pool, ready to perform the trick. All eyes in the crowd were on her and Neela. When Marina extended her hand to signal Neela to come closer, something changed. The Orca veered off the usual routine. At first, it was barely noticeable, a subtle hesitation in movement. But Marina felt it. She knew her. She sensed that something wasn't right. And then it happened. Neela, usually so graceful and precise, made an unexpected move. A playful dive, a gentle nudge, an innocent gesture. But it was a sign. The first sign that something was wrong. Professional as ever, Marina concealed her anxiety. She smiled, splashed water to keep the crowd entertained, and tried to restore the rhythm of the performance. But Neela didn't calm down. The second time was different, more aggressive. A sudden, powerful grab caught Marina off guard. Neela's massive jaws clamped around Marina's arm with such force that shockwaves rippled across the water. For a split second, Marina froze. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Was it a mistake? An accident? Had Neela lost control? The crowd didn't understand what was happening. To them, it still looked like part of the show. But Marina felt the difference. She fought to break free with all her strength, but Neela wouldn't let go. The water around them churned and surged. The sounds of splashing and struggle drowned out everything else. In those final moments, time seemed to slow down. Marina's mind raced, trying to make sense of the chaos. What had happened to the unbreakable bond she believed in? What had gone wrong? In front of hundreds of stunned spectators, the connection Marina had trusted, the relationship she had nurtured through years of hard work and devotion, was betraying her. Neela, the orca she had loved, had transformed from partner to predator. The bond and trust were shattered in an instant. The crowd still hadn't grasped the true horror unfolding before them. To them, it still seemed like a performance, but to Marina Lissaro, it was anything but. In a heartbeat, everything changed. Neela, once a trusted partner, became a force of nature beyond Marina's control. With one swift motion, Neela's massive jaws clamped down on Marina's left arm, sending a searing, unbearable pain through her body as the powerful teeth pierced deep into flesh. Marina's body jerked violently as Neela dragged her underwater. The world above the surface vanished. Gone were the sounds of laughter and familiar tricks. Now the audience heard only the deafening roar of the ocean and the desperate screams of those witnessing the unthinkable. Marina's body flailed like a rag doll. The water thrashed wildly. Every attempt to break free was met with renewed force. She fought with everything she had, but Neela was stronger. Each dive pulled her closer to darkness. Marina tried to resist the orca's weight, gasping for air as her lungs burned. The pull of the water and the crushing bite dragged her deeper into the abyss. The crowd, now sensing something was wrong, began screaming. Panic broke out in the stands. People pointed frantically at the water, not understanding what they were seeing. Staff rushed to the pool's edge, throwing out nets and activating alarms to try to draw Neela's attention. But the orca ignored them. Her focus was entirely on Marin. For a moment, Marina surfaced. She gasped, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. She barely had time to breathe before Neela yanked her back under. The struggle continued, desperate and relentless. Marina's body twisted underwater as she fought for her life. At exactly 2:48 p.m., her face surfaced again. She trembled, barely holding on, but her eyes were still locked with Neela's. She was gasping, her strength fading. Neela's grip was relentless. Every attempt to escape was met with overpowering resistance. In that moment, it felt as if the world had stopped. Spectators, staff, everyone could only watch, helpless witnesses to a brutal reality unfolding before them. Marina's final moments were a desperate battle between a woman who loved the ocean and a predator born to rule it. The bond of trust had been destroyed by a force of nature that even Marina could not tame. At 2:55 p.m., Marina's lifeless body was finally pulled from the water. Neela's grip loosened, and she was dragged onto the wet concrete by the pool. Her body was limp. Water dripped from her clothes and hair. The scene looked nothing like what the audience had expected. The show had turned into a nightmare. Paramedics rushed in. They fought desperately to revive her, doing everything they could. Their movements were urgent, precise, but it was clear life had already left Marina. The battle was over. Around the pool, disbelief hung in the air. People stood in shock, struggling to comprehend what had happened. Staff continued CPR, but their efforts were in vain. The light that once shone in Marina's eyes had been extinguished in an instant by the animal she loved and trusted. When the coroner's report came in, it confirmed the terrible truth. Marina had died from blunt force trauma and drowning. Neela's powerful jaws had caused fatal injuries, and repeated submersion had deprived her of the oxygen she needed to survive. But as authorities launched their investigation, it became clear the horror of that day was just the tip of the iceberg. OSHA and wildlife protection agencies began immediate inspections. What happened in those final moments? Was there something more behind Neela's behavior? Alarming facts soon came to light. Neela, once seen as the perfect partner, had a history hidden from the public. Reports surfaced documenting a pattern of warning signs that had been ignored for years. Small displays of aggression, incidents during training, moments of disobedience. All had been quietly downplayed or dismissed. But now, after Marina's death, the truth was undeniable. The signs. There were whispers behind closed doors. Trainers talked about Neela's unpredictable moments, instances when she showed aggression and irritation in the most frightening ways. But the desire to protect the park's reputation and fear of damaging its image prevented anyone from taking these warnings seriously. The warnings were quiet, but they were ignored. The days following Marina's tragic death were filled with grief and confusion. A park once full of joy now stood still. The laughter that once echoed through its walls was replaced by sorrow. Staff, guests, and trainers struggled to comprehend the loss of someone they respected, a person who had devoted her life to the animals she loved with all her heart. Marina was honored almost immediately. A memorial was held in her name at OceanWorld. Friends, family, and colleagues gathered to remember her. There were tears. There was silence. And among it all, one question remained. How could this happen? How could someone who loved these creatures so deeply, who had cared for them her entire life, meet such a tragic end? But even in the midst of grief, a deeper question began to emerge. Should orcas and animals like them even be kept in captivity at all? The public began demanding answers louder than ever before. Marina Lissaro's death ignited a new wave of protests, calling for an end to the captivity of orcas and the release of animals trapped in these facilities. The debates grew louder, and the calls for change could no longer be ignored. How many more lives would it take before things changed? How many more futures would be shattered before this cycle ended? Marina's dream was always about connection, about working with these incredible beings to show the world their beauty, intelligence, and grace. But her dream ended in the very place that once felt like a sanctuary, where she believed in her bond with Neela. What happened in the water that day was not just a loss of life. It was the result of years of exploitation, of animals forced to live in conditions they were never meant to endure. Wild hearts were never meant to live behind glass. The ocean is their home, not a tank. And while Marina Lissaro's story has ended, the story of these animals is far from over. Questions and cries for justice echoed long after the memorial, and the world began to reevaluate its stance on captivity. As days turned into weeks and news cycles moved on, the image of Neela, alone in a vast blue pool, remained in the minds of many. The orca who once danced with Marina now drifted alone. An animal trapped in a life that was never truly hers. There in the cold, silent water, she swam endlessly. The same endless motion that once symbolized her beauty now felt like a ghost of a stolen life. The story of Marina Lissaro and Neela will never be forgotten. The questions about the true cost of captivity, about broken trust between humans and wild animals, will continue to demand answers. As spectators, we carry the responsibility to question the systems that place animals like Neela into heartbreaking circumstances. We must ask ourselves, how many more lives, human and animal, must be lost before we change our view of captivity? This is not just a story about one woman and one orca. It's the story of all animals still in captivity. It's a bigger fight for animal rights, for freedom, and for a future where these beings can live as nature intended, free from the chains of a tank. If Marina's story touched you, if you feel anger at what happened that day, I urge you to act. Share this story. Talk about it. Raise your voice for those who cannot speak for themselves. Educate yourself about the realities of captivity. Support organizations fighting to free animals like Neela. Change begins with awareness, and awareness leads to action. Thank you for joining us today to honor Marina Lissaro, her life, her devotion, and her love for the ocean and its creatures. May her story be the spark that leads us toward a future where these animals are respected as the wild, majestic beings they truly are. And let's work together to ensure Marina's dream and her ultimate sacrifice were not in vain. If you haven't already, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss stories like this. Every like, every repost, every comment helps bring attention to these important issues. We appreciate your support, and together we can make a difference. Thanks for watching.